Welcome to Cellular Wisdom with Dr. Mercola. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the most important discoveries in modern medicine that most people have never heard of. Imagine if your cells had an alarm system that was supposed to turn off after a threat passed out, but instead it got stuck in the on position. That's essentially what's happening in millions of people right now, and it's driving everything from chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia to autism, autoimmune disease, and dozens of other seemingly unrelated conditions. Today we're talking about the cell danger response and how understanding this mechanism could be the key to unlocking your own healing.
Welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. Stay informed with quick, easy-to-listen summaries of our latest articles, perfect for when you're on the go. No reading required. Subscribe for free at mercola.com for the latest health insights.
Welcome back, everyone. We're so glad you're here today because this really is groundbreaking science that doesn't get nearly enough attention in mainstream medicine. When cells get stuck in this defensive state, they literally stop doing their job. They stop communicating with neighboring cells, they stop producing energy efficiently, and they stop healing. It's like your entire cellular government went into lockdown mode and just never came back out.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that this mechanism was identified through rigorous scientific research by Robert Naviaux at UC San Diego. He spent decades investigating why certain conditions seem to create a state where the body just can't recover. What he found is that the cell danger response is actually a normal protective mechanism. It's designed to help you survive acute threats. But the problem in modern life is that we're living in a constant state of threats that keep this response activated.
So let's break this down so everyone can understand what's actually happening at the cellular level. When your cells detect a threat, whether that's a pathogen, a toxin, an injury, or even excessive stress, they release chemical signals. These signals are called purines, particularly ATP. ATP is your cellular energy currency, but when released into the space between cells, it becomes a danger signal. It tells neighboring cells something has gone wrong and they need to go into protection mode.
That's a perfect explanation. So imagine ATP as a word that means something completely different depending on the context. When it's inside the cell powering your metabolism, it's energy. When it's released outside the cell, it's literally saying danger, danger, danger. Your cells detect this alarm and they shift their metabolism. They stop focusing on growth, repair, and reproduction, and instead focus entirely on survival. They become rigid. They activate their defenses. They stop communicating.
And this is where it gets really important for people to understand. In an acute situation, this is brilliant. If you get injured or you get an infection, your cells going into this protective state actually helps you survive that immediate threat. But here's the problem. In modern life, we're exposed to chronic, low-level threats that never really go away. Processed seed oils, electromagnetic frequencies from devices, environmental toxins, chronic stress, sleep deprivation. These things keep the danger signal turned on.
Right, and what happens is your cells get stuck in this locked down state. The healing process never completes. So you might treat the initial problem, but the cells remain in danger mode because the triggers never really went away. This explains something that frustrates both patients and practitioners all the time, which is why someone can seem to recover from an acute illness but then never feel fully healthy again. The cells never got the all-clear signal.
Dr. Mercola has long talked about how mitochondrial dysfunction underlies so many chronic diseases. The cell danger response is actually the mechanism that creates that mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are not just the powerhouses of the cell, they're also the threat sensors. When they detect danger, they change how they operate. They produce less ATP and more reactive oxygen species. They stop being efficient energy producers and become survival machines.
That connection is huge. For years, I've been saying that if you want to address chronic disease, you have to address mitochondrial function. Now we understand the deeper mechanism. The mitochondria are responding to persistent danger signals. They're not broken. They're doing exactly what they evolved to do. They're in survival mode. And until you remove the triggers that keep them in survival mode, they're not going to shift back to being efficient energy producers.
So, what are these triggers that keep the cell danger response stuck on? Well, there are several categories. First, there are environmental toxins. We're exposed to thousands of chemicals that our ancestors never encountered. Pesticides, heavy metals, microplastics. These can absolutely trigger and perpetuate the cell danger response. Second is what Dr. Mercola has extensively documented, which is seed oils. Most seed oils are highly oxidized and inflammatory. They signal danger to your cells.
The seed oil issue is particularly insidious because these oils are in almost every processed food. People are consuming them multiple times a day without realizing they're essentially feeding their cells a chronic danger signal. When you switch to healthier fats like coconut oil, olive oil, and animal fats, you remove one major trigger. Third, we have electromagnetic frequencies. The research on EMFs is sometimes controversial in mainstream medicine, but at the cellular level, there's clear evidence that certain frequencies stress cells and activate the cell danger response.
Fourth is metabolic dysfunction, which usually comes from consuming too many refined carbohydrates and sugar. When your cells are exposed to chronically elevated glucose and insulin, this is another danger signal. Fifth is chronic stress. Cortisol and other stress hormones are powerful signals to your cells that something is wrong. And sixth is sleep deprivation. When you don't sleep, your cells never get the safety signal they need to transition out of danger mode and into repair mode.
Now here's what's really important. All of these triggers are things that modern life creates almost unavoidably. Most people are exposed to all 6 of these simultaneously. Your cells are getting bombarded with danger signals from multiple directions. It's like living in a war zone from your cell's perspective. So the first step in healing is to remove as many of these triggers as possible.
And this is why simple interventions sometimes have such profound effects. When someone changes their diet, reduces their EMF exposure, starts sleeping better, and manages their stress, they're removing multiple danger signals simultaneously. Their cells finally get the message that it's safe to come out of lockdown. But here's the catch. If cells have been in danger mode for a very long time, sometimes they need additional support to make that transition.
This is where some really interesting research has emerged. There's a drug called Suramin that was originally developed as an anti-parasitic medication decades ago. Robert Naviaux and his team have found that Suramin can actually help reset the cell danger response. It essentially tells cells that the danger is over. In some cases, particularly with autism, they've seen remarkable improvements. The challenge is that Suramin is not widely available, and insurance doesn't cover it for this use.
But the good news is that there are natural approaches that can support your cells in making this transition out of danger mode. First, and this goes back to what we were just saying, you need to remove the triggers. This is non-negotiable. You can't heal if you're still being exposed to the things that keep your cells in lockdown. Second, you want to support your mitochondria and encourage mitochondrial biogenesis, which means creating new, healthy mitochondria.
This is where exercise comes in. When you exercise, especially resistance training and high-intensity interval training, your cells sense that they're being challenged in a good way. They respond by making more mitochondria. Over time, this increases your cellular energy capacity. Time-restricted eating also appears to support mitochondrial health. When your body goes through periods of fasting, it activates cellular cleanup processes and supports mitochondrial renewal.
Nutrition is critical too. Your cells need the raw materials to rebuild themselves. Adequate protein, healthy fats, micronutrients from diverse plant foods, minerals like magnesium and selenium. These all support mitochondrial function and cellular healing. And then there's something that's sometimes overlooked but is actually really powerful, which is grounding or earthing. The idea is that direct contact with the Earth's surface might help your cells discharge excessive charge and reduce inflammation.
We live in an environment now where we're insulated from the Earth most of the time. We wear rubber-soled shoes, we work in buildings, we're constantly interacting with synthetic materials and electronic devices. Our ancestors were barefoot on the ground. There's growing evidence that this direct contact matters for cellular health. So, simple practices like walking barefoot on grass or soil or using grounding mats while you sleep might be more important than we've realized.
So let's bring this back to the big picture. If you're dealing with a chronic condition, if you've been sick for a long time and nothing seems to fully work, the cell danger response might be the underlying mechanism. This isn't to say it's the answer for everyone, but it explains a lot. It explains why acute infections sometimes leave people chronically ill. It explains why autoimmune conditions persist. It explains why some people with chronic fatigue feel like their energy production is fundamentally broken.
And it gives us a framework for healing that actually makes sense. Instead of trying to suppress symptoms, we're trying to help your cells understand that it's safe again. We're removing danger signals. We're supporting mitochondrial function. We're giving your cells the opportunity to return to their normal state of health and cooperation. This is cellular wisdom at its most fundamental level.
The exciting thing is that this research continues to evolve. There are clinical trials ongoing. Dr. Mercola and other practitioners are exploring how to best implement these principles, and more people are learning about this mechanism every day. If you're someone who has struggled with chronic illness, you might want to explore whether the cell danger response is relevant to your situation.
Start with the basics. Look at your environment. Are you being exposed to seed oils? Can you switch to cleaner fats? What about EMF exposure? Can you reduce your time around wireless devices and create a sleeping environment with less radiation? Look at your sleep. Are you getting 7 to 9 hours? Look at your stress. Do you have practices that help you feel safe and relaxed? Look at your nutrition. Are you eating whole foods or processed foods? These foundational changes can be incredibly powerful.
And if you want to dive deeper into the science, Dr. Mercola has written extensively about this topic. You can read the full article at mercola.com. There you'll find more detailed information about the research, the mechanisms, and the practical approaches to supporting your cellular health. Thanks so much for joining us on Cellular Wisdom. We'll see you next time.
Looking for trusted health wisdom you can hold in your hands? Discover the life-changing books of Dr. Mercola at joyhousepublishing.com. These titles bring decades of natural health research into practical steps for better energy, stronger immunity, and clearer thinking. Take charge of your health with guidance rooted in science and experience. Visit joyhousepublishing.com now and claim your bonuses while they are available.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.